How's it going? And welcome to The Guitar Effect. My name's Rob. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the Mooer Preamp Live. But before we do, I'd ask you to please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can be notified every time I put a new video out. So, the Mooer Preamp Live. This is basically all of Mooer's micro preamp pedals in one unit. It's extremely capable. It's very impressive, actually. So what this does is basically it's an amp simulator, right? Amp and power amp and cab simulator, actually. And how it's laid out is you've got your amp controls across the top, which is volume, bass, middle and treble, gain, and then there's a boost control, which I'll speak about in a second at the end. And then there is a master volume and a master presence, which are really, really useful, great things. And an effects loop level here, because there's an effects loop on the back here. There's a send and return in between the input and output. There's an XLR output, and then there's MIDI in and out, and there's a headphones output and USB. And how it works is using the software, you select which preamp you want, and then you've got 4 presets per bank, and there's 3 banks, right? So in one bank, you select what preamp you want, what cabinet you want, what power amp you want, and also which boost pedal you want. And how that works is there's a boost level here, and when you hit this switch of the current active preset, it activates a boost, and you can put that boost either before or after the preamp so that it gains up the preamp or it makes the preamp louder. And that's applicable to every single preset, right? So that's basically what it is. And it has... I bought this one second hand, actually, and it seems to have a lot of extra preamps already loaded into it. So it's got there must be 50 or 60 preamps to choose from. And then there's 10 cabinets, 5 or 6 different power amp simulations. There's about 7 or 8 boost pedals. They're all digital, obviously. And there is about 7 or 8 different mic choices that you can use, and then also there's a noise gate as well, by the way, that you can put on post and pre the preamp. And there is you can move the microphone forward or backwards from the cabinet, and also you can move it to the cone and away from the cone, basically. So it's extremely tweakable. So the basic idea with this is that you would use it on your pedal board, right? And you would use it in conjunction with your overdrive and distortion pedals. And then in the demo that I do, I have plugged a Line 6 M5 into the send and return for reverb, predominantly after the preamp but before the speaker stimulation. And then I use MIDI out of the MIDI out to select presets on the M5 as I use it, and it worked a treat. The interface, which I'll show in the demo, is really, really easy to use. It's not the prettiest interface I've ever seen. It's a bit kind of workmanlike, but it completely gets the job done. And overall, I struggle with digital amp modeling. I'm an older player, let's say, and so I grew up using amplifiers. And funnily enough, I do use a modeling amplifier. I use the Line 6D T25, but it is just 2 channels with 4 choices of preamp. And that's all it is, whereas this is 50 different choices of preamp. And as I was putting together the different presets that I put together for the audio section of this video, I probably spent 3 or 4 hours testing out every different preamp to find the sounds that I was looking for. And I also found that when you do that, when you do spend time trying to find the sounds you're looking for out of this thing, so say you've set up 4 presets and it's like clean, dirty, heavy and lead, for example, and you might use a different amplifier on each one of them, or maybe you might use a different one you might use one for clean, one for dirty, and then the same one for heavy and lead, for example. Mixing the levels to make sure they all line up together, not having too much of a dramatic change in sound as you go from one sound to the other. It's challenging, whereas if you use pedals with an amplifier, you've one bass sound and you can plug pedals into the front of that bass sound and you can control everything with the pedals. I will say that the distortion characteristics that you get from using something like this are more complex than you get using a distortion pedal, and that can be interesting and useful. And it's probably the most impressed I've been with amp modeling in terms of format. So being able to have, 4 different amps at your feet, or actually 12 if you consider that you're using MIDI, and the effects loop and the boosts and stuff, it's really, really well thought out. So fair play to Mooer. This is a really, really great product. However, I'm undecided yet as to whether I'm going to keep it. There's two things that I have not gone through in this video. I'm going to go through in another video that I'm going to try. One is, it could be a really useful tool to plug into your amplifier, because it does this thing where you can use the effects loop to plug in the preamp of your actual amplifier, and then use a switch to switch between. Okay, so say I was using my Koch Studio Tone 20, which is the main amp I use for all my demos. I didn't use it today because I was going direct with this, right? But I could put this on top of the amplifier, and with one switch have the Koch active, and then with another one have a Vox active, with another one have a Fender active, and with another one have, say, a Mesa active or something. And that could be very, very useful for recording, having all those tones, but set up in a way as if they were all the way the Koch is already set up in my signal chain. So with all my pedals going into the front of it. That's one thing I'm going to try. And then the next thing I'm going to try is, I really like there's a Deep Purple Black Knight preamp sound. It's really, really good. They make I'm going to plug this into my HX Effects pedal board, which is my main gigging pedal board. And I'm going to plug it into one of the effects loops, and I'm going to use it as if I was replacing my amplifier with it, because I use Marshall generally style sounds for that, for like almost Plexi or JTM style clean sounds when I'm putting my pedals in front of them. That's my favorite type of clean sound. So I'm going to put that up and just have one preset and use it instead of my amp and see how that goes. If that works well, and I prefer that format over everything else, I may sell this and just buy that one micro preamp pedal, because as far as I know, they're exactly the same. So that's the pedal and what it does and what the features are and everything. So let's get into the audio demo now and take a listen to it. Okay, so now to the audio demo of this unit. So how I'm doing this is guitar straight into Preamp Live for a bit of reverb, just to give this thing a little bit of atmosphere and a little bit more comfort in playing. I'm going to plug I have plugged the Line 6 M5 into the effects loop, and then from the output straight into my audio interface, right? And I'm going to do 3 different, obviously there's 3 different banks of presets, so I thought I might as well run through the 3 banks of presets. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'll grab my Strat, right? I'm going to play a different guitar for each one of these 3 demos. And the first demo is going to be about 4 standard amp models, right? So a Fender Twin kind of thing, or a Fender Deluxe kind of thing, with a tube screamer in front of it, a Vox AC30 with a boost pedal in front of it, a Marshall Plexi with a tube screamer in front of it, and then a Friedman style amp with an actual post boost just for volume boost, right? So this is like the 4 most standard presets you might have in a situation where you were doing this, right? So starting off with the Fender Deluxe, just to go through what I have on the actual preamp here. So I'm on the wrong preset. So back to the Fender one. Okay, so on the preamp, you can see I have US Classic Clean. The EQ is pretty much all flat. And then by the way, the reason I'm looking off screen is to read the interface here. Then I have Kali's 6L6 power amp on, and I have a Deluxe 112 cabinet with a U87 on it. Okay, so it's very much what you would do to set up a Fender clean sound in sense of this. You can hear a bit of spring reverb coming from the quite dynamic. So if I play lightly, it's quiet. If I dig in, it has a bit of... I have that set completely clean, so... So it's like no breakup at all. Okay, so that's that, and then if I hit the pedal, if I hit the boost, I should say, it turns on a tube screamer, which you can see here when I hit the boost. It's really nice actually when you hit the boost on the unit, the interface changes the settings on the boost. So it's a gain quite low on the level, about a third of the way up. So just to show you, like so. Fender amp and a tube screamer. I mean, that sounds pretty convincing to me. So that's the first thing. And the second thing I go on to is the Vox AC30 style sound. It's really interesting. Maybe I've not played enough Vox AC30s, but I always find the modelers of them tend to be just a little bit too much in that low mid push. It does sound like a Vox though. So that's the Vox sound. And then if I push it with a boost pedal, one interesting thing you'll notice, right? I'm still trying to figure the MIDI out. So when I hit the boost pedal, you can assign the boost pedal to send a different message to the MIDI message out. So first of all, every time I hit the boost pedal, it changes a preset on the M5. Or not, every time I change preset, it changes preset in the M5. But also every time I hit the same button to turn on the boost, it also changes preset. Now there's so many different presets that it's bringing up from the M5 that I've just turned the ones on the boost channels off because I need to spend more time figuring out the MIDI. The boosted Vox sounds quite good. So that's the Vox sound, and then the third one I have is a flexi sound. Clean it up. Glorious sound. And then if I push the boost, I get the just a great sound. And lastly, I have a Friedman style amp. What's interesting here, it's one of the things I hate about amp modelling is trying to balance the volume of the different amp models. So if I go back to the Plexi, the volume on the Plexi is at like 2/3 maybe, over to the Friedman. The volume is significantly later. I'm just going to turn it up slightly. I've turned it up full way actually. Cool sound. great sound, and then you push the boost and it puts a post boost after the time, so the same sound only later. And that's the heavy sound. So that's the first lot of presets. So it's like a Fender, a Vox, a Marshall and Friedman for 4 different amp tones. And I think this pedal does them all really well. The Vox, I don't know about this super pushed like low mid-range thing. It's my least favourite of the sounds it does. But I mean, you know, still sounds like a Vox. So that's those. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab the guitar I use for when I'm playing in my function band and show you the 4 sounds that I set up for that. Okay, so this is my Telecaster that I built. It's like a cheap mahogany body with a Squire Telecaster Custom from the classic Vibe range neck. And then it's got a P90 in the neck and a DiMarzio Chopper T in the bridge with regular volume tone. Okay, so I have to reference the software here to know exactly what presets and amps and stuff I use. So the first thing I always do when I'm setting up sounds, so I'm going to actually use Play It Live, I try to find a way to get variance in tone, or almost variance in gain structure, but keeping everything else consistent, so that when you go from one patch to another, there's not a massive difference. One thing I did on the last set of presets was I made sure that, like on the Deluxe it was a 112, and I should have talked about this when I was in. On the Vox AC30 it was the Silver Bell 212. On the Marshall it was the 1960, 412 cabinet, and same on the Friedman. I don't do that when I'm doing this. I make sure I'm using the same cabinet for everything, so that keeps the sound consistent. So live, when I'm playing in a wedding band scenario, rather than using a Fender valve amp as my platform, I actually prefer a kind of a Marshall-y sort of sound. So what I'm doing here is, on the first sound, so I have 4 sounds, I'll just show them first. I've clean, break up, heavy, and I've lead. And what I'm doing is, I'll show you how all those 4 of them are made up. And it is actually quite different to the Fender, Vox, Marshall and Friedman thing. What I'm doing here is quite different. I'm trying to like get the most consistent 4 sounds. I would also say that I could probably gig with just this setup, right? So with the preamp live and the M5 and the MIDI switching that goes on between them, it's pretty much all I would need. Okay, so what we have here is, starting with the preamp, I'm on the Black Knight clean, which I'm presuming is a super lead, a Marshall super lead clean sound. It's the tiniest little bit of breakup. If I hit really hard, okay. So that's the clean sound, and when I hit the button or the boost, it brings in a pre-pure boost. Okay. And then on to the next. Oh, sorry, before I move on, it's important to state that if I go into the cabinet, I'm using 6L6 power amp, a Deluxe 112 cabinet, and a U87 for the clean sound. Okay. If I then go on to the second one, I have a Kali JPA. So this is interesting. I spent ages yesterday trying to find a slightly broken up tone. Some of them worked. The problem was basically the clean ones were always too clean at the highest setting still, and the dirty ones were too dirty at the highest setting, or too dirty at the lowest setting. I couldn't really get one in between. So this Kali JP, which I'm presuming is a John Petrucci Mezza Boogie model, was the best I could come up with, right? And then mixing that with the same, this time it's an EL84 power tube, so that it has a bit more sag. Has a bit of a voxy character there. Sorry. And after that we have the same U87 mic in the same Fender Deluxe cabinet, right? So the cabinet and mic are the same. I'm back to the preamp. kind of sound I would spend most of the night in. My wedding / function band kind of has a punk rock sort of aesthetic to it, playing pop songs, and it's really enjoyable stuff actually. That's my main sound that I spend most of the night, and then when I hit the boost, that is a pure boost again. Okay, moving on to the third sound, the heavy sound. Okay, so what I've done with this, to go back to the interface, I'm using the UK Gold distortion preamp, which again, I'm presuming UK Gold must be a Marshall style preamp. Marshall plexi kind of sound. The cab again, you'll see, still a 57 Deluxe 112, this time an SM57 for a bit more mid-range, and a UK Gold EL34, because again I want the kind of tube's saturation characteristic. It's great, like. This one has a TSI 808 in front of it. So you can see it, like that's my solo boost on that sound. I wouldn't use a huge amount. We don't play that many songs to require that much gain, but like. Again, a little bit of reverb coming from the M5. And then lastly, I have my solo sound. So what's that? So we go back to the preamp. Again, it's UK Gold distortion. This time it has a boost on, which is an 808. The level is higher. And it's the SM57. So basically that is the exact same sound as the second heavy sound, but it's louder, and it's got a slightly longer delay on the M5. So that's those sounds. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a different guitar and show you what you can do using one amp model and one cab through all 4 presets, and then using the pedals to get different sounds. So give me 1 second. Okay, so moving on to the third set of presets now. Okay, I've switched to this Hagstrom Juice F. It's the kind of guitar I use for playing originals, and this is the kind of setup I might do if I was going to use this thing for play originals, right? So when I play originals, I only ever use 1 amp or 2 amps sometimes, but this can't do 2 amps, so I can't do that. I can't do like a 2 amps simultaneously, so I'm just using 1 amp. And when I use the what was it called, the Headrush gig board, which I don't have anymore because the switching just didn't work well enough for me, when I used that, I found I loved the sound of the Fender Bassman. So what I've done is I've chosen the Fender Bassman and its corresponding cab for all 4 of these presets, and then I'm using either different gain structuring on the amp or actual pedals to get different sounds. Okay, so here is the first sound. And that's my clean sound. So let's just see what's going on there. So if we go into the preamp, you can see it's a 59 US bass. The cab is an EL84 with a Bassman 410, and it's got a C3000 mic, which I liked the best in this scenario. And on the boost, I have a super hard-on boost, with the gain quite low and the level still fairly low actually, right? So what that sounds like, here is the, I'm playing on the bridge humbucker. I like the characteristic of the Bassman. It's got a very honest, just true representation of the guitar. Next pick up. A little bit of break up there. If I turn on the humbucker, or if I turn on the single coil. I might need to turn this up a little bit. Okay. Clean sound. On the second... Oh, and what's the boost doing? So just it's giving a boost at the same time. On the second preset, it's kind of like starting at the point where that last one left off, and this time we've got an analog echo on. Boost. That time the boost is a gold clon. On the third preset, and this is what's really interesting, I have a big muff on. You know, it's actually a pretty good muff sound. So yeah, that's the muff sound. On the last one, I have a boosted lead sound with a tube screamer in front of the 808 in front of the same amp. And that's just to show you how you can do something a little bit different using like the muff and the clon and stuff for different sounds. So it's just a quick little thing I threw on in the end there. It's all using the Fender Basement preset. So there you go. I'm very impressed at the overall sound of it. I like the usability of it, I like the way it works. Like I said, I think combining it with maybe an outboard reverb pedal and the M5 could probably be enough to get me through any cover gig, which makes for a very, very, very small and compact, lightweight pedal board to bring to those wedding and function shows. So it's something I'm definitely going to explore. I like the MIDI capability. I like the fact that you can activate different presets on the M5 as you go through the patches. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with this. Like I said, my jury, I suppose, is out on amp modelling. I just can't make up my mind. I keep trying different things. Like I use the Joyo American sound when I'm using amp modelling at the moment, and I get perfectly good results with it. This is way more complex than that, and way more impressive, and not the same thing at all. But I'm just cannot decide whether or not amp modelling has a place in the way I play guitar. This is probably the most impressed I've been, not necessarily with the sound, but with the way it works and the way it's designed and the user interface, both on the computer and on the pedal itself. I've been really impressed with that. And I really like this unit. So I'm going to play with it for a good while before I make a decision about whether I'm going to build a board around it for certain applications or whether I'm going to move it on and just replace it with one of those preamp pedals. So there you go, the Mooer Preamp Live. If you're looking for amp modelling to complement your already existing pedal board, or to build a pedal board indeed around amp modelling, and you don't want to go to Helix route or something like this, I think they're maybe about €300. I'm not sure, but I think this is a really good place to start. The sounds are really, really good. The functionality is really, really good, and it's fun. It's actually a fun unit to engage with. It's not so overpowering with there's no screens on this, which I really like. It's not overpowering. You don't get option paralysis. You do get a little bit of option paralysis, I will say, from the 7 million preamps that you can choose from, which I think is kind of unnecessary. I'd prefer to do is like 7 or 8 preamps, and I could choose between them. One thing I did find, and I mentioned in the audio demo, was finding a preamp that had a broken up sound. So a pass, clean, like punk rocky kind of dirty sound was hard. Either the dirty sounds were too dirty or the clean sounds were too clean. Finding one in between was a little bit tricky, which I've often found is a problem, with amp modelling, is getting that in between broken up sound, which is one of the reasons that I haven't embraced it, I'd say. Okay, so there you go, the Mooer Preamp Live. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, throw them in the comment section down below. And as always, please like and subscribe if you have gotten this far. And I'll see you in another video again soon. Cheers. Bye.